someone higher up, maybe Dave Castro, maybe someone else, was just like, hey, just get them all out there now. We gotta reclaim the narrative. All right, for the most part, semifinals invites have been sent out and accepted at this point, so we have a good idea of who is going to the semifinals and whose seasons are actually over. When I recorded my last video, I said no one's season was over just yet because the reviews were still underway. Now we have lost some pretty good athletes, not necessarily the people that were contending for the top of the podium, but some athletes that we expected to see at the games. So a couple of those are Nick Matthew, Paige Powers, and Sydney Wells. There's also several others who will not be at semifinals this year because of those significant penalties they received on workout one. I did a whole video talking about that, so you can check that out. I will link it up here in case you're curious, but it's an unfortunate situation. Dave Castro addressed it a little bit in his weekend review, basically saying that online competitions aren't going anywhere, but that there were some errors in the way they approached this situation, and they are looking to fix those for the future.
Will this system evolve, and will we handle online competitions, which frankly are not going anywhere, in a different way? Probably. For example, requiring angles for some of these videos and some of these movements where we have in the past and didn't this year probably could have helped clear some of this up.
But what I will say is I do think that box step up movement is a difficult movement to do at a high speed and video from the correct angle, that it looks perfectly. It's just not a great online qualifier movement. Is it a good movement for fitness? Is it a good movement to test and have in some competitions, in live competitions? Possibly. Definitely a good movement to just put into your training. But box step ups versus box step overs, it's just not ideal for an online competition. In the same way, burpees, just burpees, not ideal for an online competition. Can you do burpees in your training? Great thing to do. Doing them in a test online where you are going to be competing against other people, it's just an easy movement to shorten the range of motion when you're trying to go as fast as possible. It's why we see burpees over the box. It's why we see burpees over the bar. It's why we see burpees to a target. And for that same reason, why I think we should have had box step overs instead of box step ups. But we've discussed that. We're gonna move on from that and talk a little bit more about semifinals and what we expect to see there. But I will add, it does look like they looked at some of the appeals. Kelsey Keel was out of a qualifying position, and when the leaderboard locked, she was back into a qualifying position at a lower position than she was prior to the penalties, so they did take away from her score, but not significantly enough anymore that she was taken out of running for semifinals. So it looks like they did look at some appeals and some they did not accept. Semifinals workouts, they were released in a interesting way. I would say interesting, but we've had leaks before. This is not the first time. It's kind of almost expected a little bit. So it appears Andrew Hiller got his hands on the workouts and he leaked, or he says released two of the workouts, event 3 and event 6. Couple hours later, CrossFit just released them all. My guess is that once they saw them released, someone higher up, maybe Dave Castro, maybe someone else, was just like, hey, just get them all out there now. We gotta reclaim the narrative, and people will be talking less about the leak if you just put out the workouts and make people talk about the workouts. So the workouts all came out. Now all these semifinals athletes have them and can prepare for them. We are not that far away from semifinals. It feels so fast this year, and if it feels fast to you, it's because it kind of is a little bit. Last year, quarterfinals and the open were a little bit closer together, and then you had more time between quarterfinals and semifinals. This year, Quarterfinals were a little bit longer after the Open, a couple more weeks in between there. And now we've got quarterfinals and semifinals feeling very close to each other. But season's ramping up, so it's fun stuff. Looking at the semifinals workouts, we're not gonna break them all down here. There are other channels who have done that and are doing that. Check those out, get with the programming. Savon has done some of that, so you could get a full breakdown of the workouts there. What I will say is I do like the way they look. I feel like they're a little bit more of a balanced test this year compared to what we saw last year. Last year, the big machines dominated the competition. We saw a lot of bigger power output athletes getting to the games. And we lost some of our smaller athletes who just weren't able to overcome some of these workouts that were very geared towards a larger body athlete. So I'm excited to see a little bit of a more even test. We still have quite a few machines, but not as many as last year. So definitely like that. And I do feel like the programming this season, Open, quarterfinals, semifinals now, looks different than what we saw last year. And I still give some credit to Dave Castro. I also very much like Boz as a programmer, but Boz has admitted that it's a team effort this year when it comes to programming, more so than last year when Dave Castro wasn't part of this. Now that Dave Castro is back, there's more of a group effort into programming all this stuff. And I think it shows. And Dave certainly has his hands in all of these things. And I definitely think Boz is a part of it too. Dave is not programming the games like he used to, but he has his hands in this. You can see it. It's happening. And I think it looks better. I like it better than last year. I like the programming, the Open, quarterfinals, and now semifinals better than last year. So whatever's happening, it's good. It's all good. While I'm doing this, make sure you like this video if you haven't so far yet. And another reminder, just while we're here, make sure you subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate you all for doing that. Trying to grow this channel as much as I can, get you out some fun content as we go through semifinals and the games, and then in the off season. So subscribe for a good time, I think. And last thing I really want to talk about is this graphic going into semifinals from Known and Knowable. I thought it was pretty cool. We have the women's field from last year's games, and we have all of the women who aren't in the field anymore, 16 of them grayed out, and the women that are still in the fields in color, the women that still have the opportunity to get to the CrossFit Games. There are a lot of different reasons for why some of these women are out of the competition. We will start with what we just talked about, penalties. We lost a couple of them during the penalties. It happens, and in my opinion, we didn't lose anyone who was contending for anything significant. And in fact, we lost some people that I'm not entirely sure would have made it back to the games this year. Paige Powers, feel pretty strongly she had a good chance. Sydney Wells would have been a little bit tougher, especially with the workouts being a little less power output this semifinals compared to last. So I don't know if some of these people would have made it to the games if they had gotten this opportunity. Regardless, there's other reasons we lost some of these women. We have a couple women like Emma Carey and Bailey Rail who are choosing to focus on things other than CrossFit. So that's why they're out. We have some people with injuries like Katrin David's daughter and Ellie Turner. We have Annie Thor's daughter who doesn't have an injury but just gave birth, so she is not competing. There's a couple different reasons here. It's not one clear-cut thing, but what I will say in addition to that is, yes, we've lost some athletes, but look at what this opens up. One, not all 40 of those athletes were getting back under any circumstance, because guess who's back in the field this year? Tia. And I would be very shocked if Tia Claire Toomey, the most decorated CrossFit athlete of all time, didn't make it back to the games through semifinals, unless she gets injured or something crazy. But Tia, one of those spots is for her. So of those 40 women, someone was dropping out. because Tia wants that spot, and I think Tia's gonna get it. So we weren't gonna see them all anyway. Moving on, we also have other women who we didn't see in last year's fields who are coming back. Names that we've seen before who have an opportunity to be back in this mix. Names like Haley Adams, who is someone who's made a name for herself in the sport. Someone who we expect when she goes to semifinals that she is going to make the games. She wasn't in last year's field of 40 where we've lost 16 of them, but she is in this year's field of semifinals athletes. So there are some athletes we're possibly going to get back despite feeling like we're losing a lot. Another one, Rebecca Fuselier, and she is somebody who, while she is trying to be a stronger, bigger power output athlete, she's not naturally built that way. So she is working to overcome that and to be able to compete in a semifinals programming like last year's, but that's not what it's like this year, giving her a better chance of making it, and there's lots more spots open. In addition to those people that we just mentioned, there's gonna be new storylines that are going to emerge because we have a more open field. And I think that's exciting, and I think that's where we should shift our focus now that we've talked about the penalties, that we've really focused on that and picked it apart. It might be time to move forward and say, hey, who's gonna get to step up now that there's more opportunity? And that's a fun place to focus as we get into semifinals, because people certainly will. I will try to make a video previewing all the semifinals and telling you who I think you should watch out for. So again, subscribe for that if you didn't earlier. And I was just looking at this. I did a bunch of hang cleans and jerks, and I feel like my neck is all messed up from that. Just breaking my collarbone. We go hard. I don't even know what that means. Probably shouldn't have said that. Anyway, if you made it this far, make sure you, again, like the video. I appreciate you all for watching. Leave a comment below if you have something to say, and I'll see you next one. Bye. Carson. I didn't even know you were sitting back there. Nope. Maybe the camera will focus on you. Are you there? Hey. Oh, you have a toy? Come on. Go get it. Go get it.